Okay. This is our interviewing skills workshop that was designed specifically for OCI, although I will say that a lot of what I say in here applies equally well to any interview situation. I will distinguish these situations for you. The workshop does not take the place, and I want to stress this, of individual interview preparation. Either our alumni mock interview program or individual preparation with a counselor. Actually, you can do both because they're very different. The mock interview with an alum, and they're usually alums from large firms, will actually take you through a mock interview situation from start to finish, at the end of which the alum will critique you. Our interview prep is much more intense. We really just throw random questions at you, usually from your resume, and depending on whether we like what you say, we might stop, we might go over that, we help you package answers, so it's very different. We could certainly do both. And that, of course, is up to you. The interview prep with a counselor is more designed to help you with answering difficult questions, like how come you got the C in contracts, or why aren't you on law review? And believe me, you're going to get silly questions like that. In any event, what I'm going to cover tonight is appropriate interview preparation, the importance of selling yourself and how to do it, and proper dress and protocol. Come on in. Okay, in general, I want to make some overall remarks. And this program is not designed to make you nervous, but it may make you nervous. But I need to stress that your preparing yourself is very, very important. So, I want to tell you that this year is going to be more competitive. Firms are cutting back on their hiring, at least at present. We don't know what will change because of the continuing uncertainty in the economy. And so what does that mean? It means that it's more important to get things right the first time. There's less available margin for error. For those of you who already submitted your resumes, you will have seen the letter from Dean Wexler, or you will see it when you submit your resume. I asked the dean to write such a letter about no-shows for on-campus interviews and callbacks. They really cannot be tolerated. We've had too many of them. They're rude. They reflect poorly on the school. They reflect poorly on you. So please pick up that letter from the dean when you go to resume submission. All you need to do is make a phone call. If you cannot keep an appointment, or you don't wish to keep an appointment, call us if it's an on-campus interview, call the firm or the employer if it's a callback, but don't just not show up or call at the last minute unless, of course, it's an emergency. I urge you for that. Please have your answering machine or voicemail system available. We will be getting calls after your interviews about callbacks, so you want to have that. Your message should be professional. And really try not to let more than 24 hours pass before returning the phone call from the employer. Very important. Emails. If you put your email address on your resume, people will expect you to be checking your email every day. So you don't want 24 hours to go by without responding to email messages either. Very, very important. And please use a professional user address. You know, like not Sexy Susan at Hotmail or something like that. You can do that for your friends, but not for when you're dealing with employers. Check our website, the OCI link on the website for announcements, updates. For example, I think 2 employers have added 3 Ls. So if you didn't check that website, you're not submitting to those employers if you're graduating. Firms are merging, and we're announcing those mergers to you. There are name changes. We want you to be aware of that. Very important. Also, our New York City and New Jersey firm lists have been revised and are ready for you in the Career Center. You'll be using those to write to any firm that does not either come on campus, collect, or is not included in our direct writes. You will be writing to them directly. We'll need to look over your cover letters for that. And sign-ups For the alumni mock interview program, will begin next Monday at 9. Just call the Career Center and tell them you want to sign up. Interviews are the week of August 5th between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. There are slots, so you can sign up for a slot that's convenient for you. Okay. Interviews in general and why OCI is a little bit different. Any interview is a sales job, and it's very important that you understand that, because more students say, I can't sell myself. It's too hard. And it is. It is hard, but it's necessary. So, and it's a sales job on both sides of the table. The employer is as interested in selling itself to you as you are in selling yourself to the employer. Don't mistake the fact that you're comfortable with people, you're at ease socially, you can have wonderful conversations, with meaning that you know how to interview properly. Because you can still not have mastered the art of selling yourself, and you still might not be able to answer difficult questions. So that's just to underline that no matter how comfortable you are, you may want to have an interview prep. We have 4 counselors ready to do that, so we have lots of opportunity. Okay, so far there's no difference. But the on-campus interview is a very unique situation. It's very structured. 21 or more students are seen by one person in 20-minute time slots, sometimes 30 minutes, mostly 20 minutes, one right after the other. And so what's important here? Oh, and you all look alike on paper. So what's important here? It's distinguishing yourself. Somehow convincing that interviewer that you're the one that deserves the call. Now, I realize we're all competing with each other, but that's an unavoidable side effect. I want to read you something from an old now book, but it's still true today. The interview begins with an effective handshake. In just shaking a candidate's hand, you can get a sense of whether it's going to be an outstanding interview. That is really true. Most career folks say the first 4 to 5 minutes are critical, and I think that that's true, particularly in the short on-campus interview where you don't have too much time to recover from a bad start. But I would add to that 4 to 5 minutes the initial walking in. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later, in more detail. From the moment you shake hands and look that person in the eye and greet that person, your interviewer has made a judgment about you. So you want to really hit the ground running. That judgment, obviously, is not cast in concrete, but it's there. You want to hit the ground running. And we can help you. Okay. There's a book that I recommend, Guerrilla Tactics for Getting a Legal Job for Your Dreams. I don't ordinarily like self-help books, but I like this one. We've been using this for a number of years. For those of you who are third years, we had Kim Hall, the author, speak here. We usually have her about every other year. Her chapter on interviewing is over 100 pages. So you can see that there really is an art to interviewing. And I recommend it to you. We have it on reserve in the Career Center. It's available in the bookstore, or any bookstore for that matter. It's in paperback. It's about $25. For those of you who are more shy, there's a classic. It's not law specific, but there is a classic out there called Sweaty Palms, The Neglected Art of Interviewing. We also have that in the Career Center. And again, that can be purchased at any bookstore. Preparation and practice are the keys to successful. You can't wing it. And you'll see why in a few minutes. There are 2 aspects to preparation. Knowing about the employer and feeling, I would say knowing yourself, but feeling confident that you can talk about anything that's on your resume. And we've all had, I know I have had the experience of being asked something like, so what do you do in a typical day? And going absolutely blank. So you need to prepare and you need to practice it. By practice, I don't mean memorizing, I just mean getting comfortable. You need to be able to answer the why us question. Why are you interviewing? us? Why do you want to work for us? You need to know about the employer in order to be able to answer that question. And in order to answer in some way or another the why you question, why should we offer you the job or the call or whatever, you need to have a good grasp on your strengths and your accomplishments and be able to really use those. Learning about the employer. You need to know about what the employer does. We have had stories about our students, about students in other schools. We have lunch with the interviewers every day. And so we hear more stories. One of our students, I'm sorry to say, one year was interviewing with the New York City Law Department, which is also called the Office of Corporation Counsel. And when asked why he wanted to interview or work for them, he said because he was interested in corporate law, which had nothing to do with that. So you don't want to do that, because the interview is over at that point. You may be in there for another 15 minutes, but I can assure you the interview is over. Okay. You will not have a successful interview if you don't understand what they do. And this goes for a law firm, a government agency, a public interest organization. For those latter, you need to know what their issues are, what their constituencies are, who they serve. Okay. In a firm, if a firm specializes in something, let's say derivatives, you need to know what a derivative is. You don't need to know in major detail, but you need to know what it is. Review the employer's now form in your directory. For employers that are not coming on campus or signed up late and their now form is not in the directory, there's the Now legal directory online at now.org or in our office. And that contains all the Now forms. In those forms are basic information. Do they rotate associates? How many lawyers are in each department? How many branches the firm has? You will be expected to know that. In other words, you don't want to ask questions back there. You might ask a question to clarify something, but you don't want to ask a question about something that you are really charged with knowing. A lot of students like to know their interviewer's practice area. Now, there are two problems with that. One is your interviewer will change at the last minute, so it almost doesn't matter. The other is, and we've been hearing this lately, students want to impress interviewers with doing their homework, so they know that the interviewer went to such and such a law school or college, practices, and the interviewers feel stalked. I pass that on to you. If you want to know what they do for your own background, that's fine, but I wouldn't make an issue of it. Particularly this year, be aware of firms or government agencies that have been in the news in connection with major cases, in connection with mergers for firms. There have been a lot of mergers. Firms are in the news in connection with major issues that are going on now. Enron, WorldCom, Anderson, Weil, Gottschall, interviews here is on Enron, is on WorldCom. You need to be aware of that. And lastly, and most important, this year in particular, you need to be aware of what's going on. If I were interviewing law students this year, I would ask them, and I'm a corporate law firm, major Wall Street law firm, I would want to know that the students are savvy, that they're abreast of what's going on, that they've formed opinions. We're not talking, there's no right or wrong. You have whatever opinion you have, but you've thought about it. Read the front pages of the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. Be sure you understand the issues that are there. Again, you don't have to know all the details, but you want, this will distinguish you. You want to have thought about it. If someone says to you, so what do you think about everything that's going on in the WorldComs and these companies that are hiding assets? You need to have been able to think about it. Not just say, boy, that's really awful. I mean, I think we all agree, but a little more. Talk to people that you know. Talk to professors. Get some grip on it. It's going to be important. Okay, sources of information very quickly. I mentioned the Now directory, Lexis or Westlaw, employer websites, Employers are very proud of their websites. They will be upset if you haven't looked at them. If an interviewer were to say to you, well, if you look at our website, and you say, no, I didn't get a chance, not a good thing. They really love their websites. Most of the websites are listed in the directory in the Now forms, and we have many links on our Brooklyn Law School EmployerNet page. That's the one with the balloons. Supplement their websites with print material. We have that in a special file, and you want to take a look at that. You don't have to do that, by the way, until you get interviews with particular employers. Information.com, which is now findlaw.com, fallreports.com, Insider's Guide to Law Firms, On Reserve and Career Center, America's Greatest Places to Work with a Law Degree, another Kim Walton book. All of these you can take a look at. American Lawyers Summer Associate Survey, we have copies in the Career Center. Anecdotal, take it with a grain of salt, but if a firm makes you an offer, you want to hear a little bit more about it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, you can take a look at that. So that's the employer preparation. Preparing yourself. You got to deliver your sales pitch, so you've got to dissect your resume. Ask yourself everything about your resume that anyone might ask you, so that you feel comfortable fielding questions. Here's one. You have a Carswell Scholarship, a Lyle, a Richardson. They're going to say, what is that? And I can't tell you how many students I've done an interview prep with that can't answer that. Not a good thing, particularly since they were deans. And you should know what earned you the scholarship. It was incoming. I had a certain GPA. I'm in the top whatever percent of the class. You need to know these things about yourself. If you don't, it doesn't seem right. Ask yourself, why did you join the Securities Law Association? Why did you join Bristol? Do you like law school? What's your favorite course? You will be asked questions like this, and you need to prepare. Be very familiar with your writings, and I can't stress this enough. 2 years ago, one of our recent grads lost an opportunity that I believe he could have gotten because he was unable to talk about his report group. And I know that that was so because the recruitment director called me and told me so. So, it's not a big deal. You look it over before your interview or a day before your interview. You know what your arguments were. You know what your point of view was. You maybe what the opposing argument was. But certainly what your point of view was. Able to talk about it. Finally, if your resume, let's say you had a prior career that is very far removed from the law. You've had ballet dancers, production people, things that, there's really no. Think about the questions you might get, including why law school. For you prior career folks, that question is very important, and we can help you package that. Don't knock prior employers, incidentally, whether it's last summer or part-time. That's a major rule of thumb. I would read again from the Now Bulletin because I couldn't say it any better myself. Being positive is one immutable essential in an interview. Students who make the mistake of casting aspersion on their schools, a law school class, a prior job, or other facet of their experience send the wrong message to their interviewers. Important to remember that. Okay. Now, develop your sales pitch. This is the hardest part. The sales pitch is 3 to 5 or so of your most marketable ones. What do I mean by that? Accomplishments, skills, strengths, and the connection between those, and that's the key to what the employer is looking for. And that's where your preparation and the interview preparation with us comes in. Sometimes you can't do that all alone. We can help you do it. Other times you can do it alone. Sometimes it's easy. You've been in banking before law school and you want to work for a corporate law firm. But it's not as easy if you've come directly from college, where maybe your entire work experience has been as a camp counselor. or a clerical assistant in some kind of company or organization? Well, you have to think about that. Camp counseling, well, what does that do? Responsibility, thinking on your feet, confidence, clerical work, organization, meticulousness. You know, it can be done. You need to think about these things. Some of the questions you'll answer with your sales pitch are, why should we call you back? Why should we hire you? What do you offer us over other candidates? You may get a question like that. What are your strengths? Here are the tough ones. Tell me about yourself. How do you define yourself? Here's a new one I heard about this year. Who are you? You know, I'm so glad I heard about that and I can convey that to you because that could really throw you. Who are you? Those are not invitations to a biography. I want to stress that. This is your moment to say yourself. That's the deal. Okay? Another one that you should be aware of. Tell me something about yourself that isn't on your resume. That's a favorite one. You got to really dig deep to think about that. I mean, if this were a 3-hour program, what I would do is make this totally interactive and go around the room and we'd all try to do this, but we don't have 3 hours. Think about that. And come and have an interview prep, and we'll talk about it with you. Also, the way you convey information is important. I'll just read you a quick thing from Kim Walton's book. The importance of interviewing is that it's a conversation. It's not just a tennis match where you hit the ball back with short answers. You should take every response as an opportunity to ask a question of your own, to add something about yourself that isn't maybe directly asked. You need to keep that in mind at all times. Here's an example, very short example. The way you convey information. Asked about your, let's say your summer job. I work closely with a litigation partner. That's the end of your response. It's okay. It invites more. And because it invites more, you should have offered more. So here, she suggests specific details. I spent most of my time doing research for a litigation partner. I usually conveyed the results of the research orally to him to save time, but in fact, I wrote 3 major memos and so forth. That's the kind of answer that you should be thinking about. Not just very specific answer to a specific question. Also, if you choose, let's say a firm, you're interested in bankruptcy, and a firm has a good bankruptcy department, and you're asked, why did you choose to interview with us? And you say, well, because I'm interested in bankruptcy, and you have a good bankruptcy department. What's the next question? Why are you interested in bankruptcy? Let me tell you, that's the hardest thing to identify, is why. We all know we're interested in things, but if we really sat down and thought about why, it's difficult. But to the extent that you can do that, it will distinguish you, and you will stand out at the end of the day. No question about it. And we can help you with that as well by forcing you to parse it through. Other questions you can expect are listed in the back of your OCI directory. Why did you decide to go to law school? Review your statement of interest, for sure. Update it in mind, if you think so. What do you consider your greatest strength or weakness? Now that's an easy one. All the career people agree on this. You turn a weakness into a strength, okay? I am a very methodical researcher. But you know, sometimes I just drive myself too hard. You can never drive yourself too hard in law. So that's a weakness which becomes a strength. So that's the general idea. Do you work better alone or in a group? I suggest that you say both equally, but you give reasons. Alone, in a group because I like the exchange of ideas and teamwork. Alone because I like to be able to puzzle things through. You know, you got to play this game. Why did you leave your last job? If that's relevant on your resume, and I'll remember what I said about negativism. Where do you see yourself? or where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years? That's a favorite. Kim Walter gives some interesting ones. Who's your hero? Who in history would you like to talk to? If you were a tree, what kind of a tree would you be? Apparently that's a Barbara Walters question. I don't know. I don't recall that. But anyway, what's the last book you read? Very important here. You know, these interviewers are not interviewers, they're lawyers. They are lawyers, practicing lawyers who are assigned the job of interviewing you on a given day. They get bored with this. They want to know more about you than just you were in the top this and you were on law review and report and whatever. Hey, what book did you read? And it also tells them something. So just think about that, you know, a little bit. Questions to ask. A lot is said about you have to ask questions. I don't agree with that. I think that it's better to say a good interview is a conversation. In any conversation, you are likely to ask questions. Never hesitate to ask a question because you feel it's the interviewer's right to ask the questions. On the contrary, I think I said this. You respond to something, it makes you think of a question, by all means ask it. Or a comment about yourself. But anyway, getting back to questions. You can never go wrong with questions which show you understand the employer's practice. Okay? But not if you have found that out on the website, or in the NALC form, or by other simple research. You can ask for expansion about something, but try to avoid basic questions that are answered for you in the homework you should have been doing. You certainly can ask about how assignments are given, how evaluations are made, whether the firm encourages pro bono work, although normally that's on the website at this point. But you can ask, for example, what forms of pro bono? And the rest of the questions in the back of your directory. Don't ask, and I'm sure you know this, about vacation time, billable hours, hours in general, partnership track. You know, we all know you work lots of hours in these firms, so that's off limits. And don't ask when you'll be here in person. It's not that kind of process. That differs from regular interviews where you might say, when might I expect to hear from you? What if at the end of the interview, and it's not a what if, it's going to happen, the interviewer says to you, do you have any questions? Now, some people, including Kim Walton, and this is one area I don't agree with her on, believe that you must ask a question. Now, I don't. Because if you don't have a question to ask, it's going to be lame. And if it's been a good interview, chances are you're not going to have a question to ask. So this is what I think. And I revisit this every year, and I still think I'm right. I think it's a closure issue. Very few interviewers just say all of a sudden, okay, we're done. Bye, it's been nice knowing you. Well, do you have any questions? Sort of, it's an indicator that the interview is now coming to an end. It's a genteel way of coming down off this rather intense period of time. And now there you sit without a question in your head. And what do? You say, this has been such an informative discussion that everything I had to ask has been answered. But I want to tell you how impressed I am with X. Have in your back pocket something about that employer that you can pull out if necessary, and that's your closure. So you've now, instead of a question, you've made a statement, but you've accomplished the purpose of that little dance that occurs at the end of every interview, or most interviews. So that's my view on it. Okay. Any questions about any of this? Because I'm moving on to interview etiquette and clothing. In the summer, in particular, and if it's windy, if it's raining, it's very important to arrive in advance of your interview, whether it's here or at the offices, so that you can freshen up. Take a look in the mirror. Make sure everything's the way it should be. You don't want to come in dripping unless you really got caught in the subway and you can't help it. So give yourself extra time. Now, I'm going to give you a no list, and I know most of you know this, but I've seen it, so I'm going to say it anyway. No cell phones, chewing gum, soda cans or water bottles you will not dehydrate in 20 to 30 minutes, book bags or knapsacks. Okay? If you want to bring extra copies of your resume, which you don't have to, but some people feel more secure, a manila envelope or a small briefcase. If you bring a briefcase, be sure that when you open it, it doesn't, overflow. Very professional, in other words, just very conservative. Wear a watch, I'm sure most of you do, so that you'll be on time, but don't look at it during the interview, even if it's boring. Now, let me say a word about that. Some of you may have back-to-back interviews, which you'll try to avoid, by the way, when you're signing up, because it really cuts kind of close. But if you're in an interview and you know instinctively this has gone longer than it's supposed to and you are going to be late, at some point you may need to tell the interviewer that you have another interview scheduled. Very sorry that you're enjoying this, but you have another interview scheduled. They will, of course, let you go. If, however, you feel that that would not be appropriate for whatever reason, then we will take care of it for you at the other end, and we need you to know that. In other words, we monitor that. So we will know if you haven't appeared at your next interview, we'll know why, and we will take care of it with you for you. Okay? We also then do a little shifting around. We put someone else in that had a later interview into that slot, and we put you in that other slot. So don't worry. Now, before, I started out talking about the first impression, how important that is. You're walking in, you're either going to be called in, or some interviewers say we'll just knock when the time is up. Firm handshake. If any of you have one of those, wimpy handshakes, you better work on it. Smile. Eye contact, very, very important. Good morning, Mr. Smith. Right in the eyes, okay? Use of name is important. One, helps you remember. Have you seen that commercial? I forget what it's for. About Mr. Dumas. You seen it? And where the interviewee persists in calling him Mr. Dumbass. It's a great commercial, but it's not good because I can't remember the product. But anyway, optimism. Try to look. You're going to be nervous. People expect you to be nervous, but try to the extent that you can, overcome it. Act. I consider this an active job, by the way. Friendly, but respectful. There's a balance of power here. You are the givee of the job, they are the giver. Your appearance will count, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, that's the first impression. Carrying through, demeanor, tone. You want to appear confident. I've said already, you're not just an answering machine. You really want to have a conversation, and that's what you do. You be proactive, not just reactive. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I've said, and here again from the Now Bulletin, I think this is 1994. Attorneys are more likely to connect with the candidates who have a high degree of self-confidence, who are bright, and who demonstrate during the interview that they are interested, have things to talk about, and are aware of the firm's practice and culture. So there it is in a nutshell. Don't get distracted. If your mind wanders, I can assure you you are going to miss a piece of information which 2 minutes later you're going to ask about. And now you've blown it because your interviewer knew you weren't listening. So really stay attentive. Sometimes we're asked questions that we can't answer immediately. Like, who are you? Or tell me about yourself. It's perfectly all right to pause. I can assure you the pause will be will be less long than you think. Don't do it too often, but certainly all right once in a while to be thoughtful before you speak. It's always a good idea to be thoughtful before you speak. Another thing to be careful of is not to be drawn into too friendly an exchange. One year we had a situation, it was very strange. One of our students was drawn into a discussion on dating with the interview, and that was not appropriate. The main problem with it is the interview is over and the student comes out and says, "Boy, that was a great interview. We really hit it off." Except the interviewer didn't know a thing about the student as a law student or as a potential lawyer. So, not a good idea. If you are drawn into some kind of a discussion that you know is going down the wrong path, try to segue out of it. Find a way to bring it back. And this also goes for, some of you have very interesting things on your resumes. You have black belts in karate, you're triathletes, you climb mountains. And interviewers, particularly attorneys who are not professional interviewers, latch onto that as a way to break the ice. And all of a sudden, 15 minutes goes by, and you're having a wonderful time describing your accomplishments in karate, and the interview is over, and it's too late. Easier said than done, but you got to find a way to get out of that soon. Right? You know, that reminds me of get it back to law school, get it back to work, get it back to anything, but get it off that subject. That also goes for any of you who've had prior careers that are of interest. You can again be drawn into a lengthy discussion about that. At some point, bring it back. Ask a question about the firm or the employer. Something to get it off track. A couple of things, gestures, and of course interview preps take care of all this. Gestures, you know, I talk with my hands, but I'm not interviewing right now. So you will be interviewing. You need to be careful of too dramatic gestures. Fidgeting, swiveling in a swivel chair if you happen to be in a swivel chair now. All of these things are noticed. Your interviewer gets a telephone call, which won't happen on campus, but will happen in an office, and this goes for any of you. You need to learn the art of keeping your face neutral while obviously you're having to listen to this telephone call. Don't spend the time looking around at all the personal effects in the office. Not a good idea, and it can be noticed. I want to talk briefly about the callback interview. Now, the callback interview, you've had your on-campus interview, and 21 of you or more, and some of you will get called back to the offices of the employer. Those interviews are usually half a day. You meet with 4 or more attorneys, a mix usually of partners and associates. If it's a morning interview, it usually has lunch tacked onto it. Now, I will tell you, you normally have a choice. The recruitment director will normally say, would you like it morning or afternoon? If you don't like having lunch for 2 hours with total strangers, I recommend you take the afternoon. It doesn't put you at an advantage one way or another to do the morning and lunch. It could put you at a disadvantage if you're not too good at doing lunch. So you be guided by that. If you're forced into an afternoon and lunch, well, then you'll deal with it. And, you know, we can help you with any questions on that. Lunch involves small talk. And the ability to make small talk is very important, particularly to these corporate law firms. They see it as an indicator of social interaction. And it is at some level, I suppose. So, you know, I just passed that on to you. There is a book out there called Great Connections, which is about communication in the workplace. It's interesting. I won't spend too much time. If you're at lunch, and I'm harping on lunch because that's basically the only difference, although I will get to one other thing. Unless you're very good about drinking midday, I don't recommend it. On the other hand, you have to be careful about how you define. Don't say, I never drink at lunch, because your host may drink at lunch and enjoy it, and you've now insulted that person. Just order water. Designer water if you want, with lemon, line, whatever, show you're, kind of savvy. If someone says, don't you drink? If you do, you could say, yes, but I'd rather not today. They'll understand. If you don't, you could say, not much. Just be careful about the no, I don't drink. This is all eating, drinking, our social actions. It's not just quenching our thirst and filling our stomachs. Now, back to the office where you're not having lunch, you are going to have these interviews one after another. And you're going to be asked the same questions one after another. And you're going to have to remember that the lawyer you're with now hasn't heard your answers to the lawyer before and hasn't seen your enthusiasm, which by the fourth lawyer, I guarantee you, is waning rapidly. It's an acting job. You have got to keep up that same level with the fourth lawyer as with the first lawyer. And that's what you have to do, because you don't know who's going to be the real decision maker. Or what normally happens, they all get together, and one says, well, gee, I thought she was terrific. And the fourth lawyer says, boy, what a dud. But they're going to know what happened. They're going to know you couldn't keep it up. And that reflects on your ability also to be with clients under long periods of time and so forth. So, enough said about it. When you're with associates, you will be tempted to ask questions that may be inappropriate, like bill of allowance and hours and vacation time, and don't do it because they're part of the hiring team. They report back. Everything you say is going to be reported back. They will also tell the partners whether they want to work with you till 5 in the morning for 2 weeks running. So it's important to be nice, friendly. You want to be liked. They want to be liked, and you want to be liked. You can ask them, are the people friendly here? How's the support staff? Things you might not want to ask the partner, but you can ask them things like that. You all have good judgment. You'll know. Okay, dress and grooming. When I started practicing, one of the senior partners, it was a small firm, said to me, you need to spend money to make money. And it's very true. And why do I say that to you today? Because you need to invest in an interview suit or two. It will pay dividends if it fits you well. And it looks really nice. And of course, for the men, there's the shirt and the tie and everything that goes with it, and for the women too. It will pay dividends. These firms, in particular, are very conservative. They follow the pack. It's really funny. They went to business casual. So they all look alike in business casual. They don't, the khakis and the polo shirts. And by the way, on that subject, you are on an interview. You are not coming business casual. And that goes for on campus, and that goes for callbacks. You may have recruitment directors say, by the way, we're business casual. Not for you. You're on business. You're on an interview. And you're going to dress in your interview clothes, whether the firm is business casual or not. We have had, by the way, in recent years, the interviewers come to the campus in casual clothes, which I guess is okay. Okay, for the men and for the women, when in doubt, go to a good department store. Put yourself in a salesperson's hands. Tell them why you're there. You're buying a suit, have interviews, or dress, if you prefer the women, and give them a budget. And you'll be well taken care of. For the men, I recommend, by the way, today's man, get really good buys there. For the women, Daffy's, Foreman's, and Taylor, the department store. There's also Sims for the men. All right, some basics for the men. Dark suits, dark gray, dark blue. I have a personal bias against black. Every year someone asks me why, I have no idea. Somewhere in my head, that's not a suitable color for business. And that's, I convey that to you, and you know, that's the way I feel about it. Blend plaids are out. Stripes, unless they're very faint. Double-breasted and suspenders belong to the partners, so you don't want to do that. Conservative tie, but it should be interesting. What? No, White Sox store. Okay. Dean Gerber, some of you know Dean Gerber. Some years ago, he spied a student, obviously dressed for an interview, a man, because he was in a suit, it was during classes. But he noticed that he was wearing white socks. Stopped him in the hall, sat down on one of those benches, and they switched socks. No white socks for the men, okay? Jewelry and cologne, it goes for both women and men. You gotta go easy on this. First of all, in the summer, the heat accentuates any kind of cologne on you. The interview rooms, we use the library for early interview week, but still, they're small, relatively speaking. They don't have windows. Yeah, there's decent ventilation, but still, go easy on that. So for both men and women, go easy on the cologne and the jewelry. Now, for the women, conservative. You know, interesting, but conservative. A suit or a dress. Collared shirts or shells are equally fine. The consensus on pantsuits is no for interviews. Now, if you feel very strongly about it, that's perfectly fine. I kind of agree with that, even if the firm ultimately permits it in the workplace. It's not considered an interview thing, but again, you need to, decide that for yourself. Heel height, moderate to low, dangling earrings. It's a problem only because they're distracting to the interview, and you may find your interviewer watching them dangling. So, and that makes you uncomfortable. I know that a lot of this seems, I'm not sure, very basic on the one hand, somehow too structured on the other hand, but there's a lot at stake here. And there's a culture, particularly with the firms that we're dealing with. And if you want to be there, you need to buy into it somehow. If you don't want to buy into it, and that's fine, maybe you don't want to be there. I finished my prepared remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes?
About how far in advance of the early interview week will we generally find out
Whether you have interviews?
whether we have an interview?
We try to encourage the employers to give us as much notice as we can. What will happen, I'm glad you brought that up, is that we will get the list from the employers, we will post it on the web. So starting around August 1st, you should be checking, well, you should be checking anyway, at least once a week for late editions and things like that. But you will check your own account and you will see if any lists have been posted. It could be a week before, and frequently isn't more than a week before. Sometimes a little more. But that's, we can only do what they can do. What we are doing, resume submission week is over on Friday. We start sending out packets immediately on Monday. So for example, the August 12th firms or employers will get their packet by Wednesday next week. So they have really almost a month. But they have to go through a lot of resumes, not only from us, but from other schools. So that's the situation. Anyone else? On that subject, though, make your appointments if you intend to have an interview. You should have one anyway, because whether you use it for OCI or something else, it's always good to have. Or you can always cancel it if you don't get any interviews, or the interviews are much later. Remember, we resume again after that.